Edward Calderwood was sitting inside the circle of his protection spell once again. He couldn't remember the last time he had left, nor the last time he had seen another human being. A deep-lying dread made him shy away from everything and everyone. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. As soon as he left the safe haven, the shadow of a beast followed him, waited for him. The sound of a knock at his door made him jump almost to the ceiling. "Sir, new letters arrived. People are worried. You haven't been seen in almost a week." The voice sounded familiar, but Edward couldn't put a name or face to it. Was it a friend, or was it someone pretending to be a friend? The voice waited for a moment longer before opening the door. The face of a rather old, black-haired man peered inside. "Sir, what are you doing on the ground?" The man approached. Letting a shriek escape his mouth, Edward managed to tell the man to stay away. "Sir, you ought to get help. You look horrible." He seemed to be of honest intent, yet Edward couldn't trust him, couldn't trust anyone. The thought alone of leaving his room made him frantic with terror. "Stay away," he managed to utter. His own voice sounded thin and worn in his ears. You are an acquaintance of his, aren't you?" Edward accused the man. He was a spy. He had to be. A spy, maybe even an assassin, should the shadow fail to rip the occultist apart. The man only looked in shock at Edward. Go! Edward stuttered. "Leave me alone." Obeying without a word, the man left, closing the door. Alone once again, Edward resumed trying to bring order into the chaos of his mind. But the underlying fear twisted his thoughts, turned them to smoke. Why was he afraid? He didn't know anymore. But he knew that Dean was the cause. What did he do? He didn't know. But he was afraid of Dean. He looked at the stones in his hand. How could they harm him? They were given to him by a friend who wanted to help him. So he could fulfill his duty protecting the country. From what? He didn't know. Yes, he did. It was his nephew. It was Dean. He was afraid of Dean because he threatened the land. He had to find him. If he found him, if he got rid of him, he would be free of his fear. Like a fragile egg, he took the smooth, shiny stones into his hand. They felt so perfect, so pure. Their presence alone soothed his senses. Together with the stones and a lantern, Edward descended into the dark once again. The procedure of summoning a demon had become familiar enough to him that he would even be able to perform the spell in his sleep. The first demon who appeared in a blood-red tempest of fire introduced himself as Cubiditas. No sooner as the name was spoken, it engraved itself in one of the black pebbles. "At your service," the entity said in a charismatic voice while bowing down. Edward didn't bother to test if the spell worked. Why should he doubt the friend that had made him this splendid gift? With the bright yellow eyes glued to everything they perceived as desirable, the demon stepped eagerly out of the magical prison. The second demon appeared in a storm of blue flames, which reflected the cold blue of his eyes. "Fastest," was all he said, not bowing nor even seemingly perceiving the creature in front of him. Just as with Cubiditas, Festus' name engraved itself on the second stone in the occultist's hand. Suddenly, heavy knocking came from the room's closed door. "Mr. Calderwood, I called a doctor. You need help." It was the voice of the man from before. It sounded concerned, but Edward would not fall for his trickery. They would take him away, possibly lock him even up. How would he defend the country from his nephew if he was locked away and surrounded by physicians night and day? "Mr. Calderwood," the voice said again, taking on a desperate tone. "Edward." "I'm sorry," another unknown voice sounded. "We'll have to do it the hard way." In one fleeting motion, the door swung open and 3 people stepped inside. One of them was the assassin sent by Dean. The other 2 Edward didn't know, but he assumed them to be part of the treachery against him and the crown. Quickly, Edward removed the circus lines for the second time, granting Festus freedom. "Shall we then?" Cubiditas said, grinning gleefully. Both demons looked at their summoner for orders. Go away! Leave me alone! Edward yelled for the second time at the man with the black hair. Sir, you don't see yourself. We are concerned for your well-being. For a moment, Edward felt himself starting to believe the man in front of him. Mr. Heads, Jacob! The occultist stammered as the fog seemed to lift from his mind. A glimmer of hope flickered in the other man's eyes as he heard his own name. Sir, please, you have to stop this. Do you really need them? Festus said in an arrogant tone, his eyes mocking Edward from behind his glasses. They will take everything you desire from you, Cupiditas continued with ambition. It is yours for the taking. Mine, Edward repeated, feeling as if in a daze. Don't listen to them, sir, Mr. Head said with emphasis, eyeing the demons. But why shouldn't I? The occultist wondered out loud. They are my friends. They are not your friends. They will lead you to your doom. My doom, Edward said, agitated at the accusation. They will protect me, protect our country. From what? From Dean. Edward uttered as dread sent a shiver down his spine once again. You're on his side, aren't you? The occultist felt how wrath made his face grow hot. His friend, the man he had known for so long, he had betrayed Edward. Dean had betrayed Edward. They had all turned against him. Dean is a traitor, Edward finally said with an edge in his voice he hadn't used in a long time. He deserves death. A shocked expression formed on all three faces. Edward, you're mad, Mr. Head said, his voice faltering. As do you who side with him. The last sentence was enough instruction for the demons to attack. Screams of all three men mingled with the sickening sound of breaking bones and tearing flesh. When the deed was done, Festus stood with his chin slightly raised as before the attack. His clothes hadn't been stained by as much as a single drop of blood. Cupiditas, on the other hand, was drenched in it. Around him, three dismembered and partly gutted human corpses. I hadn't had so much fun in eons, the yellow-eyed entity said with a broad grin. A pang of regret shot through Edward's entire being while staring at the gruesome scenario. He had killed his friend. What was he becoming? The world would hate him for that, but no, it wouldn't. He had done the country a favor. He had eliminated the traitors looking to destroy it. He stared at the bloodshed for a moment to resolve his internal struggle. The unnerving feeling of loss wouldn't let go of him. He knew he was right. He always was. But what kind of human would murder his own kind in such a fashion? Was he a monster? No, he was a protector. Aiden, what am I doing? He cried out as he slumped down to the cold ground. He felt hot tears roll down his face. Weariness and confusion held him in its iron thrall. A hand on his shoulder made him look up. You should compose yourself. People will think you to be weak. Festus spoke in a hypnotizing, calm voice. Blue, flawless eyes looked down on him like the eternal ice in winter, pure and perfect. A wry grin curved Edward's lips at the absurdity of his behavior. Turning into a smile, it grew broader until he couldn't suppress a laugh any longer. It was also absurd. His confusion, loneliness, Dean's betrayal, his brother's death, even his own fury he had felt only moments before. Everything was futile in this existence, was it not? He was protecting his country, and how did the people thank him? Wiping away the tears and adjusting his disordered hair, the occultist got up. You're right. I can't look like this. What are your orders, Master? Cupiditas asked with eyes still full of delight as they left the cellar. Go and look for Dean Calderwood. Kill him. Edward ordered the demon, who started to display a hideous grin. Festus will stay here with me. There are many people who need the help of powerful occultists.